Clydeside Distillery. My name is Olga. I'll be guiding you today to the exhibition and the distillery tour, and then we'll finish with a nice tasting. So first things first, for your own safety, in case of a fire alarm, but we don't expect one, just follow the green signs. We'll guide you to the nearest exit. Face mask stays on during the duration of the tour, but once we're in the tasting room, as I said, you can take them off and try the drums and relax. There's hand sanitizers on the walls as well, so please feel free to use as much as you need. Photos are allowed everywhere. There will be only one place close to the spirit safe where we're not taking photos or video, but it's just, I'll remind you once we get closer to the video, just for safety. And then the first bit is a short video about the Queen's dog. So it's a little bit related to this photo. So we're right here. So this is how it used to look. A lot more water. Now that's all the conference center and where the hydro is for concerts, and that's where the COP26 just happened. So hence all the construction still a little bit next to us. So I'll let you watch the video and then I'll pick you up and we'll continue to the exhibition day. Okay?
Yeah.
It's about 4 minutes long, it's not too long. Good job.
Now. You can't just go wandering anywhere here in the quayside when we're unloading a ship's cargo. Smell the baccy, the fumes from the whisky, the rum, the exotic spices. Yeah, it's easy to get distracted by them and everything else that goes on round here. You gotta keep your wits about you. Watch your step butt. I've lost count of the amount of Irish dockers and Highlanders for left all hang behind for a chance to come and work here at Glasgow Port, only to end up losing a hand or a leg. Others their lives falling down a hatch or half the quayside just because they weren't looking. Well, either that, they were bloated, blind drunk, but... And you didn't want to go crying foul or reporting accidents either. No, you want to work here again. That foreman was singled out from all the others at this morning's call on, putting a few hours work your way, a few shillings in your hand. He'll look straight through you, the Laura, if you mention compensation. And then it doesn't matter how many whiskies you buy down the alehouse and try to remember. It's all about to be different though. Now that they've got a proper union in this. There's two you ken here at Glasgow Dock. Ours and the Glasgow Harbour Labourers Union. A bunch of blackleggers who broke our last strike. I could tell you a few things about the old society if you want to hear a bit.
Dude, but you winning.
Talk of the devil.
Because you're on my time now, no cock-anny time. That's when we purposely go slow, just to make a point, if you get what I mean, to the bosses, the shipping companies. Right, come on, let's pick up the pace. There's 40 vessels due in port today from America, China, Australia and the West Indies. And this one's neat loaded up and away with the next time. Honestly, you wasters don't do yourselves any favours, do you? Standing about here telling tales when there's new grain elevators down the water that'll do the job of 50 men with just 6, and in a fraction of the time. Sometimes though, it doesn't matter how quickly you turn around a ship, especially if the whole thing, vessel and cargo, ends up in the boat in Clyde. That's what happened to the Wallachia last month. Full to the brim she was, whisky, gin and beer. She left Queen's Dock bound for Trinidad and Demerara, only to be struck in the bows by a steamer out in the fog, less than a mile off the coast. She went down in 25 minutes. It's a terrible waste. Still, it's a dangerous business we're in. And you, Kenny, you Egypt, you'll be in Davy Jones's locker along with the Wallachia. You didn't hold your leash and get a shift on. There's 50 barrels of the finest malt. Less a wee bit. To be loaded up before it goes the round. That's what they call it when they ship it out to Australia for the first time and back again. It's improving and maturing all the time while saving on expensive storage. They're canny types, they whisky barons. Here, don't let me keep you good folks any longer. Take a walk along the quayside. Might be surprised at what else you discover. They tell me there's rats down there as big as cats.
This first room is about the history of whiskey and the Glasgow barons. The second room will be about the Morrison family, the owners of the distillery. There's also an interesting video about how the distillery was built. So we should give here about 15 minutes because there's a lot of information and videos for you to see, but there's no specific order, so you can decide in which order you want to check both of the rooms. So I'll give you the 15 minutes and we'll meet up on the second room where the second video is, and then we'll continue to the distillery. I'll be talking about it. So let's see, it's 11, so let's say 11:25 on the exit of the second room. Okay. All right, enjoy.
Follow them to the present day, right back to towns west of Broadway State. Now, like John Dewar and Sons part of the HQ. Whiskey barons may be long gone, but Glasgow's enduring connection with whiskey continues. Soon he was making a fortune for whiskey, now to have a new suit made every week, and to our best Broadway State. By the end, he was enamored with his personal execration. Much more fun than a logistic rhythm teacher. It's hard to imagine the perfect order and subdued quiet of teachers' dram shops appealing to our next whiskey man. James Buchanan, who said of himself, "I marvel at my supreme self-confidence," originally worked for a Glasgow shipping firm. Moving to London as an agent for whiskey merchants, he went on to introduce the English to Buchanan's Blend, a popular, lighter alternative to the often unreliable and, some would say, too full-flavoured single months of the day. A canny marketer, Buchanan drove around London in an eye-catching bright red carriage. He also hired a group of young actors to storm out of a hotel on hearing that Buchanan's wasn't on the menu. Buchanan's, Dewar's, Ballantyne's. Back in the day, most whiskies were sold under their founder's name, but not Peter Mackey's White Horse. Then again, Mackey wasn't like other whiskey barons. For a start, he went straight into the whiskey business rather than wasting his time with anything else. Yes, Mackey, who has been described as 1/3 genius, 1/3 megalomaniac, and 1/3 eccentric, knew exactly what he wanted and invariably got it. So insistent was he on using only fine, mature whiskies in his blend that he earned the name Restless Peter. For this and other contributions to the whiskey industry, he was knighted. Arise, Sir Peter Geoffrey Mackey, 1st Baronet. And so to the last of our whiskey barons. Tommy Dewar wasn't just larger than life, he was also ahead of his time. Credited with transforming the family business into an international success, Dewar publicised the company's London office with the first illuminated sign. He also commissioned the world's first commercial for a drinks brand. But not all his advertising was as extravagant. He also had the bright idea of making a bicycle tyre that spelled out Dewar's whiskey in the tracks it left behind. And do you know where those bike tracks would lead if you followed them to the present day? Right back to Iron Town's West Thorn estate. Now the site of John Dure and Sons Glasgow HQ. Whisky barons may be long gone, but Glasgow's enduring connection with whisky continues.
So, welcome back to the next part of the tour. And does anybody know how to make whiskey? No? They're in the right place. So, first things first, on this part of the tour, I'll basically explain a little bit about the whiskey making process. So once we go through the distillery, you can understand better what each machine does. And then we'll end up with the tasting. So, to make whiskey, you basically need 3 ingredients: water, barley, and yeast. The water doesn't come from the River Clyde. Son's job. It actually comes from Loch Catherine, which is 40 miles north from Glasgow. And actually, interestingly enough, the ancestors of the Morrison family, which you read about in the previous room, they also helped building the water supply from Glasgow. So the water in Glasgow also comes from Loch Catherine. And it's a nice place for hikes as well. The second ingredient, the barley, we get it from 7 different Scottish lowland farms. The variety is called Diablo. And once we have the water and the barley, that's the first stage of the whiskey making process, which is called malting. And basically what happens is they will put the barley in warm water, let it germinate, so it releases that starch that we will need later for the whiskey. So once it's germinated enough, they will dry it, and that's where some distillers will add peat to it, and peat gives that smoky flavors to some whiskey. Looks a little bit like this, it's kind of like very dry soil. So not all distillers will do that. The whiskey that we're tasting today doesn't have peat, but that's where it happens during the process. And then the second part is the milling. So we'll get our barley dried, which looks like this, and we'll mill it into 3 different components called grist. So the ratio is 70% grit, 20% husks, and 10% flour. And we're basically breaking it down. So once it goes to the mash tun with hot water, it's easier for those starch enzymes to break down and release the sugar that we'll need as well for the whiskey. So the husks, they won't turn into sugar, but they work as a filter. So whatever remains after, it's called draff, and we use it as a biofuel. So for us, we're able to power 100 homes per hour. But what we want to keep, as I mentioned, is that sugar in liquid cold wort. So once we have our wort, it will move to the wash bags for fermentation. And that's where we add the last ingredient, the third one, the yeast. So once we have the wort and the yeast together, we basically have to wait for it to ferment. And for us, we're waiting for a liquid cold wash, which is an 8.4% alcohol, kind of like a malted beer. So once we get our wash, we'll go on to the stills for distillation. So in the stills, we have a wash still and a spirit still. So basically distilling it twice. And what we want to get from it is a 71% alcohol spirit, which is quite strong. So we'll dilute it with a little bit of water to make it 63.5%, and that's what we call the new made spirit. So there's no whiskey yet, but that's the base for the whiskey. So that's the one that will go to the casks for maturation. And for us, we have bourbon casks and sherry casks. So we put the new made spirit in 2017, but it has to be a minimum of 3 years in oak casks in Scotland. And only after the 3 years in oak casks in Scotland, you can call it single malt Scotch whiskey. So, as I mentioned, I put it, our new made spirit, we put it on the cask in 2017. So only this year, we were able to get the first whiskey. We got like some extra months to go, fortunately. So it's under 4 years ours. And that's the one that we have in the shop. So we released it, we had our bottling, and also Modelo actually a week before COP26. And then we were closed, and then we were open again. Very excited to releasing our new product to the public finally after the wait. And This angel, that's the 2.5% alcohol that evaporates every year from the cask. They call it angel share because they say the angels still a little bit of whiskey for themselves. So yeah, so for the tasting, I'll be giving you kind of like a treat. So we'll taste the new made spirit so you can see the before, but I'll also give you the casks separate, so the bourbon and the sherry casks, so you can taste how much of a difference a cask will make as well. They're not for sale separately, so the one that we sell is kind of like a marriage between those two, so you're getting kind of like a little bit of an exclusive dry cask that are not for sale. Any questions so far? Alright, so once we get out of this door, that will be the mash tun. So we'll stop there. I'll tell you a little bit more about the mash tun. Then we'll walk through the wash packs. I'll tell you a little bit more about the wash packs. And at the end of this room, that's where the spirit safe is. And because it's distilling that 71% alcohol, that's where we're not allowed to take photos. Think of kind of like a gas station room. But once we move to the still house to the corner, from the corner it's perfectly safe to take photos and you even get a better angle from the still house. So I'll give you some time to take photos. Alright? Alright, so follow me. So is anybody driving? No? That's good. So otherwise I'll give you a chance. But you don't have to drink it all. It's just kind of like, as I promised, it's just for you to taste a little bit of what is the base for the whiskey, what we call it on whiskey.
This one?
So so what we want to do is, it looks like this. It's very clear spirit. So that's after being distilled and adding a little bit of water. So it's 63.5. And what we want to do is smell it like one nostril, then the next one. So you can get, besides the strong alcohol smell, you get a little bit of that syrupy sweetness out of it. So go ahead, give it a smell.
Is it like a schnapps, like liquid?
It's supposed to be sweet, but it's just water, barley and yeast, so there's no sugar added to it or anything. But it has a little bit of that sweetness, right?
Yeah.
That's the process that we just saw, like the malting, the fermentation, the distillation. So that's the flavor we were trying to extract from the barley, the sugar and the flavors. And what we want to do is try a little bit without the water. It's quite strong. And then you have pipettes, so add a lot of water to dilute it and try it again. So you can see how it changes. It becomes a little bit smoother as well. But if somebody tried grappa before, they say it tastes a little bit like grappa, Italian grappa. I had a group of Americans, they say it tastes like moonshines.
Yeah, it tastes like grappa. Like not in the end, but
Has that sweetness to it. So you're getting that sweetness that is being extracted.
Yeah.
You get a little bit of that barley smell as well. And even hints of banana, surprisingly, but that's just the reaction, the type of barley, the water. You get that sweetness out of it, and that's what we're looking, because if you get a good base, once it goes into the barrel and reacts with the barrels, you get these really nice flavors out of the whiskey. So depending on the water, the barley, how many hours fermented, like every distillery will have their own times and types of barley and types of water, so that will influence the whiskeys as well. And you don't have to drink it all if it's too strong. The one that we want to try after. How are we doing? Are you getting that sweetness?
Yes.
Warms your heart immediately.
Yeah.
Tasted and smelled previously. And you also get a little bit hints of vanilla and caramel, which is quite characteristic of bourbon.
Tastes like whiskey now.
Now, yes, it's whiskey. That's kind of like a very traditional whiskey. So what happened in the past is bourbon casks in America, they can only be used once, and they have to be discarded. So that was a great business for Scottish people, because then they can get the casks. Like now you buy them, but previously it was more kind of like an exchange of trade. So that's why kind of like how the industry started.
But now you can reuse the casks.
You can reuse the casks. So what happens is they will char them. So what they do is they will take the cask, they will burn it from the inside, and that activates the wood again, and then they'll scrape it. Yeah. And then you can reuse it again. But you only get like a certain amount, but of course you lose a little bit of flavor every time. So you can only use it a certain time, a certain amount of times. But you can do that. Like this one is a first fill because we just started as a distillery. But especially distilleries who do a lot of blending, they can reuse the casks more often. So it depends on each distillery. Some won't, some will have their own places where they make the casks for them. Some will buy them from different providers. So it all depends. So are you getting that little bit of the oakiness as well? So what you want to do is you can add even maybe 3-4 drops of water just to open up a little bit of flavor. And then you'll get a little bit hints even of pears, green apples. Interesting enough.
Kleine spielen sich auch wie schwer der ist.
Nice, Ella.
So do you think this is a very young whiskey?
Very nice.
It's nice.
What do you think?
Yes.
The flavor is super good.
Yes, it's smooth. Are you getting a little bit of those green apples? Pears, a little bit, no? No. Don't worry. It takes a while. It took me a while as well, but you get them. But you get a little bit, those flavors will evolve. So the longer they stay in the cask. So if we didn't open the cask and let it maybe 5-10 years, it will be more red apples than green apples. So the flavors will constantly change. Of course, the color will become darker. So that's kind of like the master distiller's job to decide when to open the cask that is acceptable for people to have it. So that's a really cool job. I think like you will taste the cask and say, oh, this is great, but maybe after 3 years it will be wonderful. So they let them sleep and stay longer there. So quite an interesting process, I think. So, but once you've tried this one, I'm not rushing anyone, but as I promised, I will give you a second cask, which is the sherry. So, they're different, but it's the same base, so it will be the same New Make Spirit. This was a bourbon cask, this is a sherry cask. This is a sherry oloroso from Jerez, from Spain, so it's European oak. And because sherry is kind of like a very red, sweet wine, that redness, of course, impregnated on the oak as well. So that's why once we put the New Make Spirit, that also will absorb the coloring of the sherry that was before it. And that's why a lot of distilleries are doing wine casks, port casks, rum casks, because they realize every cask will have their own kind of like taste. So what you want to do once you finish is rinse a little bit the glass. You can throw the remainder in the spittoons, and then I'll be pouring you the sherry. Just kind of like the pressure.
I'm a little bit amused by seeing this. A little bit bemused by it because I've drunk whiskey all my life until now. And whiskey that I drink, except some strong malts or like Glenfiddich, it was like considered to be, oh, you don't put water in whiskey, it's horrible.
Like we do that because it's quite a young whiskey. I don't believe that. Yes, but like we do that, it's quite young, so we're allowed to do that. But I know this rule that always said like, oh, you can only put water in whiskey. I think for us, no, that's one. But what I always say is like for somebody who doesn't like whiskey, I say like, yeah, add some water to it because they're just learning about it. And then usually people enjoy it sometimes a little bit more.
I've been used about my share.
It's a little bit more on the sherry because it's like a little bit dark. So they do also kind of like mixing both of them. So what you want to do is smell it. So it's sweet, right?
Yes.
So you get like, this one will be a little bit sweeter. And because the sherry is quite traditional, you get a little bit kind of like the raisins. It's a little bit more sweet to it. Even plums a little bit, nutty, you get that sweetness.
Yes, I tried.
Yeah. Experience. So that sweetness also translates a little bit to this one. So it's a mix, a different mix of flavors, of course.
Yes, yeah.
You getting any extra smells or spices a little bit? If you taste it, it has like a little hint of spice. This one somebody said last week, it's like, oh, it's like Christmas cake.
It's like Christmas cake.
Christmas cake.
So do you think of this one?
It's a bit spicy, yeah.
A little bit spicy, but sweet as well. It's quite an interesting.
Sweet.
I think it's way better than a I like it more than the bourbon.
I usually get like a 70-30 one, like some days this one wins, sometimes this one. I've noticed in winter, this one kind of like becomes a preference, and in summer, this one is kind of like maybe weather, and that's amazing. That's the amazing thing about whiskey. Like you can get different flavors, different whiskeys, so it's like with wine, you can have different wines, different whiskeys at home as well. And it also depends with the region. So for example, we have the main Scottish region here. So we're lowland, so we're kind of like lighter, grassy ones. Then we got Clydeside, which is kind of like a big concentration of distilleries together. In the whiskey, it's quite interesting as well. Goes really well with seafood as well. This is Top Rock. So it's kind of like the region here in the Irish called Top Rock. So they name it after the place. But we don't have this one.